Welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network, coming to you from the TeacherCast studios since 2011. Join us each week as we bring you the latest educational news, EdTech updates, and hottest interviews with today's most influential leaders in education. And now, for your host, Jeff Bradbury.
Hello, and welcome to the Jeff Bradbury Show. My name is Jeff Bradbury from the TeacherCast Educational Network, and on today's show, we're going to be talking all about educational entrepreneurship. My guest today has helped start many companies, and currently, he's helping to mentor thousands of entrepreneurs over at the Penn Graduate Program. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking for more information, stick around, because in this episode, we're going to learn not only how you can get started, what makes a successful EdTech startup, but also how you can be successful getting traction in the schools. For more information about this show, please feel free to head on over to teachercast.net. You can check out all of our podcasts from Digital Learning Today, Ask the Tech Coach, The Jeff Bradbury Show, and Educational Podcasting Today. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and share this podcast with your friends. My guest today is a serial entrepreneur who has funded and led several educational technology companies, and he's currently the entrepreneurial in residence for Penn. I want to bring on today my good friend, Mr. John Gamba. John, welcome to TeacherCast. How are you doing today?
Hey, Jeff, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me on the show.
It is so great to see you here. You know, we've been talking over the last couple of weeks about some of the great work that you're doing at Penn. How's everything down in Philadelphia?
Everything's great. The weather's turning. The cherry blossoms are out. We're kind of getting through that cold snap, and now spring is here. So it's beautiful. I actually live in North Philly, so I walk to work. I walk to West Philly to campus. I like to say it's 1.6 miles to my office. If it were 1.7, I'd Uber.
I miss my time in Philadelphia, and I know we've talked about this before. I'm a Philly guy, even here, hearing all the news about the Eagles and the Phillies starting back up. What is the sports town like? Let's just start right there. What is it like to be in Philadelphia this time of year in the sports world?
Well, I have to say, I'll start by saying I grew up in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and the Eagles used to have training camp at Westchester University, and I was a ball boy. So I grew up with, loving Louis Giamona, Ron Jaworski, Bill Berge, Frank LeMaster. So you can kind of get the sense of how much of a Philadelphia crazy I am. It was tough. Last year was really tough. You know, we got out 10-1, and then the season collapsed. And this is a real tough time. You know, the Fighting Phils are in Clearwater. You know, we're getting excited about the season coming up. The Sixers are stumbling with Joel, injured. But you know, Howie's doing his thing, and we're starting to see some activity and some new blood coming to the Eagles. Saquon, I'm just fired up. What can I say? I'm a diehard Phillies, Flyers, Eagles, Sixers, Fever, Fury. I can just go on and on and on. So I'm a diehard, and I make no apologies.
One of the other things that you make no apologies for and that you're a diehard for is helping school districts, helping education. I'm going to dive into all of that stuff today. But one of the reasons that we got together here today is to talk about some of the things that you're doing at Penn. Tell everybody a little bit about the work that you're doing and some of the things that you've got your hands on these days. Yeah,
so I am actually the first entrepreneur in residence at Penn's Graduate School of Education. Our last dean, Grossman, really was thinking about how to push forward all of our plans for innovation with regard to education technology, transforming worldwide education through our Milken Penn GSE business plan competition, which is now in its 15th year. And really, Dr. Michael Golden, our executive director, and Dean Pam Grossman, now Dean Catherine Strunk, really was looking for somebody who had actually had some experience operating companies. I had founded, funded, overseen several EdTech companies. I'm a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania. Seemed like a great fit. Been there 5 years. Absolutely love what I do. In fact, in my one-to-one mentoring sessions with fellow entrepreneurs, some of them come to the sessions and there's like, I'm a little tired. You know, is this normal to feel exhausted in terms of starting, founding, overseeing companies. And I always say, Jeff, I say, are you running to the shower in the morning? Are you running to the shower, thinking about new ideas, thinking about how to develop your team, thinking about how to transform education as we know it? Or are you running in there saying, I don't know if this is cut out for me. I'm having a hard time with my team. I can't raise money. And then you got to really think about what you're doing, and take a hard dose of reality and maybe pivot. But love what I do. Work with 250 to 300 entrepreneurs every year through our continuum of programming and our Milken Penn business plan competition, and just excited for another cycle. We're now looking at narrowing the hundreds of applications down to 25 semifinalists, eventually 7 finalists. And then they'll be live on the big stage in New York on September 10th for our 15th annual Milken Finals.
I am looking forward to that conference. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody there. I got to ask, how did you get involved with this? I would assume that there's education in your family.
Yeah, I'd love to tell the story that my parents were first generation high school graduates. None of my grandparents graduated from high school, but they all always saw education as the path to a greater life. It was a funny story. My grandfather on my father's side, Babe Gamba, was a painter. He painted bridges in Newark, New Jersey, and he famously told my father, "I really don't want you to hold a paintbrush because I'm afraid you'll like it. You're going to college, you're graduating from high school, and you're not going to be in the trades. Nothing wrong with that." But really saw my dad as somebody who could graduate from high school and go on and have a successful college career as a student athlete, and then eventually in the business world. My mom, on my mom's side, my grandfather was an entrepreneur himself, and my mom kind of got the entrepreneurial bug. And then my mom and dad met at Penn. My mom was in the Penn School of Nursing. My dad went to the University of Pennsylvania. He got a shot. Rest is history. Like to tell the story that, in 2 years ago, the 3 Johns, my father, John Gamba, myself, John Gamba, and my son, John Gamba, walked down Locust Walk. My dad's 60th reunion, my 30th reunion, and my son's graduation from the University of Pennsylvania. So a lot of history, a lot of heritage. We bleed Penn red and blue as a family. I'll also say I had a life dream come true when I, around the time that I had sold my company to Blackboard, we formed the Gamba Family Foundation, and all of us came together and said, what can we do as a family, my sister being the executive director, my mom and my dad, to advance education as we know it through the lens of school choice. We looked at a lot of charter management organizations. We looked at transformations in education. We looked at teacher training and really made some big bets in that area. And I'm happy to say recently we just gave away our $1 millionth through the Gamba Family Foundation to some pretty cool education causes. So it's all near and dear to our heart as the Gamba family.
So recently we had a big speech in Washington, and I want to ask you about a similar topic. If I was to say, John, what is the current state of education? What would you say?
I would say that the one word that would come to mind would be opportunity. I think that you are in a place right now where we've kind of gotten into a post-pandemic world. We can finally say we're in a post-pandemic world. We have a lot of concerns. We have a hair on fire situation with mental health crisis in schools. We have a hair on fire situation with what's going to happen with the funding that's come in as a result of the pandemic with the ESSER funds, $190 billion of ESSER funds that were earmarked and geared toward supporting students with learning loss, supporting students' mental health, getting students back on track as a result of the pandemic. And I see huge opportunities. We're going to see transformative applications in the area of AI and machine learning. I think we're going to see opportunities to really disrupt current modalities in education, but without touching what I think is probably the most important component in education, which is the teacher, and really think about teacher training, teacher professional learning, and arming teachers with the tools to continue to put students first. So I'm seeing it as an opportunity. I think you may have been alluding to the State of the Union where President Biden talked about tutoring and ensuring that students get access to tutors and students can read proficiently by the third grade. I'm really thinking about this through an asset lens and through a sense of opportunity to really continue to build on what I've seen happen as a result of a big push in education during and post-pandemic.
So I want to ask you two questions, but they're really the same, but I'll give it to you from two different points of view. You had just said the word opportunistic. How can John Gamba support that? And then I'm going to ask the same question. How can John Gamba from Penn support that?
Great question. I think that I can support it by leveraging a lot of the experiences I've had in my 25, 30-year career as an education entrepreneur. Really thinking about when you look at the opportunities in education, looking at it through the lens of what is the problem, what is the solution, what is the market, TAM, SAM, SOM, what is the value proposition or the logic model or the theory of action, theory of change that can be brought forth to really put in place a new application, a new venture, a new product, a new service that can really support students and teachers where they are. What I can do through the University of Pennsylvania is incredibly unique. It's something that I can tap into and have the entrepreneurs that I work with tap into in a way that I wasn't able to as I was building some of my education technology companies. And that's design and develop through the lens of research and research to practice. We're really big at Penn GSE on research practice partnerships. And what we mean by that is when an entrepreneur comes to us and says, I've got this new approach to competency-based math or VR-based social emotional learning or teacher training to promote health and wellness in the workplace. We always say, what is the underlying or the foundational research that's being put into place to substantiate your value proposition? And then what is the evaluative model that you're putting into place so that you can measure the outcomes of whatever you're going to deliver? Because we believe that if you are designing through a research to practice lens, you're going to be more sustainable, investable, and ultimately more scalable. So I get a kick out of working with entrepreneurs and then tapping into our different research centers, our Center for Human and Optimal Development, our Center for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, our Center for Counseling, our Center for Teacher Training, the Penn's Literacy Network for addressing issues related to the literacy crisis that we see in this country. So first, it's personally leveraging my experiences as a social entrepreneur, leveraging a lot of lessons learned, but then inside Penn's ecosystem, really thinking about things through the lens of a research to practice, because we know that leads to sustainability and ultimately scalability.
Well, you just mentioned lessons learned. If I was an entrepreneur and I was working with you at Penn, what are some of the things that I would be learning, and what were some of the things that I would need to know to be successful in the program?
Yeah, we did a lot, trying to practice what we preach. We did a lot of market research, a lot of discovery with the entrepreneurs that we've been working with to ask them, what do you need? What can we provide that's going to support you as an education entrepreneur on your education entrepreneurship journey? And what we found is pretty much three things depending on the type of education entrepreneur we were working with. The ideation stage, those who were thinking about brand new ideas, really needed business fundamentals. They really needed this idea of how do I create a lean canvas or a lean business plan, determine what is the problem and solution that I'm embarking on, and what can I do to get out there and through customer discovery to develop a prototype or an MVP, a minimally viable product, and ultimately get to commercial viability. The MVP stage, the entrepreneur that already has a product and maybe has a few contracts with school districts or higher ed institutions, they came to us and they said, we have this product and works pretty well, but we're not able to figure out yet how to really sell it at scale into these institutions. So a lot of training there on efficacy-based sales. How can you go into a school system and say, I'm delivering this new product or service, and this is why it will work. And if it does work, this is how you'll see that it works through dashboards and analytics and those types of applications. The later stage entrepreneurs really need support in scaling the operation. And that gets into a lot of how do I form a cross-functional team? How do I scale through the lens of product-led growth? How can I bring this team, get larger as a team, and continue to build? We get a lot of companies that come to us and they get to their first $1 million or even $5 million of annual recurring revenue, but they really struggle to get to that 15, 20, 25 million. And we do a lot of training on talent development, cross-functional team building, and how to build a team through a purpose-driven lens.
Do you find that there's a difference between being an entrepreneur and being an educational entrepreneur where, students are the ultimate goal rather than having a product marketplace solution?
I think there's nuances. At the end of the day, an entrepreneur is, in my view, is an entrepreneur, whether you're focused in various or different vertical markets. I'll tell you, Jeff, a story. I do some teaching and I teach entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial mindset in different schools within the University of Pennsylvania, including the Wharton School's Leadership in the Business World a program. Young students, high school students who are about to become seniors in high school. And I always ask the questions. Great story. I say, what is entrepreneurship? We literally start with that question. And I have the young gun seniors in high school giving me the textbook definition of entrepreneurship often. One student will say it's taking a risk with your own capital. Another student will say finding a new product or service and bringing it to market. And the answers are very good. And I say, here's my definition of entrepreneurship. And they all kind of lean in. Couple classes, 200, 300 students. I say, how many of you have used ChatGPT? And all of them raised their hand 3 weeks ago. Said, how many of you use ChatGPT to cheat? 7 kids raised. I'm like, what are you doing? What do you? And I make that point, and then I share with them that a year ago, when I was teaching that same class, no one had raised their hand. So entrepreneurship with 100% adoption in 365 days is really that. It's innovation happening at the speed of imagination, supported by research, evaluation, and iterative design. And I walk them through that process of what is research, what is evaluation or an evaluative model to track and measure the impact that you're delivering, and what is iterative design. A lot of students get excited when I say, we track a lot of these transformative applications in the space, like Conmigo from the Khan Academy. Interesting thing, what makes these companies and what makes these platforms great through the lens of entrepreneurship is iteration, co-construction and co-creation, bringing these ideas into lab settings and having the students go at it or the teachers use it and provide insight. And there's a famous quote or a famous story from Saul Khan when he was bringing out this new virtual assistant, this new virtual application for Conmigo, that it wasn't until he got it into the Khan Academy labs and asked students to play with it that the magic happened. It wasn't software engineering. It wasn't the latest LLM and AI. It was, what do you find valuable, student, in a student-centered environment about this application? And the students who raised their hand would say, I don't know why this teaching or this virtual tutor is relevant. Why am I learning this? And the best and most popular button on Conmigo has become, why is this relevant? And that happened through a co-construction, co-creation lens, and a lot of iteration on those types of products and services. And I share that story because you see the nuances. Entrepreneurship innovation at the happening at the speed of imagination. But when you start getting into the nuances of education, it becomes really interesting as things are developed through a co-creation or a co-construction lens.
You can be an amazing entrepreneur. You can have the greatest team around you. You can have all the education, financial backing. Over the last 13 years of doing TeacherCast, I have seen companies come, I've seen them go. I've had them on the show, and then a year later, they're nowhere to be found at ISTE. In your opinion, how does an entrepreneur survive in the classroom? How do you go from idea, backing, MVP to teacher adoption, to successful teacher adoption? What's going to make these startups of today be relevant next year?
So I can give you a lot of opinions to that on that question, and we can be here for hours. But let me tell you what the research says, because again, I want to walk the walk on the research. So we've looked at 1,000 EdTech products, just like you do, and we asked, if you looked at 1,000 EdTech products and 950 of them failed, 25 of them did fairly well, and we're now right around 30, 35 unicorns, billion-dollar EdTech companies. And we asked the question, why? Why did they do well? Why did they survive? And the research shows, when you look at the Duolingos, or you look at the Poptropicas, or you look at the Nuzellos, or you look at the Desmos or the illustrative maths, three things. And those companies tend to go 3 for 3 over the lifetime of their design and development process. One is that the product or service, especially digital learning now, is super engaging. It's a Fortnite or a Minecraft-like experience. Students need to be super engaged with great UI, UX, gamification, leveling up, points, rewards. Second area is that pedagogical alignment. If it's integrated Nuzella, if it's integrated into a classroom, how does it align with an instructional episode, and how is it delivering against a specific standard? So that crosswalk or that pedagogical alignment is critically important. And third was the ease of adoption. Minimal professional learning or professional development to learn it, but some. And a teacher has to be able to access it interoperably and easily for it to work. We see a lot of companies that go 1 for 3, 2 for 3, but those that really go 3 for 3 hard or work toward 3 to 3, we're seeing are becoming more and more successful as a rule. That's what the research is showing.
Would you be able to name a company out there right now that you see, whether it be one that you've worked with or just is out there in the horizon, that really is getting it, is really kicking tail?
Yeah, I would say that my friends at Link Learning and my guest on my next Entrepreneur Breakthroughs, Jason Green, Jaime Palos, are crushing it with their Your Way virtual assistant. And the reason why I think that's working is they're following the research that I just shared. It is engaging. It is pedagogically aligned through the lens of student-led or student-centered learning. And finally, it's easy to adopt. And it's not just a ChatGPT wrapper, this Your Way tool. It's actually something that a teacher can design himself or herself to help take down some of the administrative tasks related to teaching, which is a challenge, as well as amp up the ability to support students where they are. So that's the promise of AI. It's not just a ChatGPT wrapper or using artificial intelligence for the latest and greatest virtual assistant, but what can you do to make teachers better or help teachers do more for less or in less time, as well as help them amp up a student-led or a student-centered learning environment.
John, I've heard this phrase many times that it goes something like, it never in history has so much been done so quickly, right? And in the last 4 years, we've gone into and out of a pandemic, and now we've got the rise of AI. What has that done to the definition or your definition of the term entrepreneur? Clearly, if you take all of that, but then you also add an entrepreneur could be some middle school kid with a YouTube channel that suddenly strikes it. How has this world changed in the last 5 years for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it starts with the fact that leading up to the pandemic, we're always looking at the TAM, right? It's a $10 trillion global industry, education. So there's incredible opportunities out there. Professor Galloway from New York University famously said, Apple could buy T-Mobile and it wouldn't move the stock price, right? In terms of an actual phone company. They need to be in education. Same with Meta, same with Amazon, same with Google. And you've seen they've made big bets in those areas. So you look at the TAM, then you look at the rising investments in EdTech to be able to support teachers to do more with less, to be able to hit that Two Sigma problem, right? To be able to develop competencies through the use of technology. And you see this enormous activity. You get up to 2020, 2021, when we hit $20 billion of EdTech investment. Why? Because of the pandemic, we saw 1 billion learners go online, right? So you're starting to see this massive investment in education technology, and then a bit of a collapse. Why? Because teachers, administrators, superintendents, higher ed institutions became much more judicious in what they were buying, and they needed to see that there were an outcome. Back to the lessons learned, back to the coaching that we provide the EdTech entrepreneurs. But I do think that there's a huge TAM. There's an incredible amount of learners have now come online. We're in the age of AI and machine learning. We have massive investments in EdTech, which creates enormous opportunities. All that's left is the execution for these EdTech companies to make sure it's a super engaging product. It is pedagogically aligned, easy to adopt and implement. And I think if you follow those rules, you'll be successful in the education space.
But John, you had said it yourself. Funding for school districts is dwindling. How do you become successful if you're an unknown right now?
I think you really have to distinguish yourself by doing a lot of customer discovery and ask yourself, is what I'm building aspirin or vitamins, right? We really do a lot of work with our entrepreneurs to go through a customer discovery process that's objective. I get a lot of entrepreneurs who go into customer discovery and ask somebody like Jeff Bradbury questions that's really a sales pitch. I want them to be inquiry based. I want them to say, when was the last time, or tell me the last time that you had to grade your entire class full of term papers? When was what was the problem associated with that? How do you currently, or how have you done that? Now notice I didn't ask, what if I told you could, because I'm selling you. I'd rather ask you those objective questions 100 times to 100 different teachers to be able to get the answers. And if your response is emotional, I'm paid what I'm paid as a teacher, I work all weekend, and I'm still not prepared on Monday, and I know I have a product that's going to help you with your grading process, not replace you, but support you so that you can grade papers better for students better, now you're on to something. So I think it's really about the priorities. It's about not throwing just stuff out there, but being super intentional with what you're building it through the lens of great customer discovery, and then co-creating and co-constructing with teachers and students to make it better, in the ilk of Conmigo, or in the ilk of Newsella, in the ilk of Duolingo, and some of the other great products that are out there.
I'm just curious, if you turn around right now, what would you say to that grandfather holding his paintbrush? What do you think that your grandfather would say to you right now, looking at the work that you're doing and the massive change that you're making in this world?
I think that he'd be very proud of my father, who's 85, active alum at University of Pennsylvania, working on some of the issues that of our day in terms of viewpoint diversity, addressing the Middle East crisis and what's happening with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and would really feel proud that the 4 family members, my mom, my dad, my sister, and I, are working together, aligned, not necessarily all with the same political views, but aligned on this vision and this mission of transforming education as we know it, leveraging the lived experiences that we've all had. My father was an executive of a large multinational company. My sister worked in marketing at MCI. I've done my thing as an EdTech entrepreneur, and my mom brings it all together with her entrepreneurial experience, her experience as a community college teacher, and we work together and have come up with a model to really put our money where our mouth is and really get intentional about the investments and the bets that we're making. And I think my grandfather, Babe Gamba, would love to see how that's all happening.
You said the quote was, "Never hold a paintbrush, you might like it." I'm curious, what is your paintbrush?
I would say creating a research-based model, a evidence-based model for mentoring social impact entrepreneurs, recognizing that still 9 out of 10 ideas and ventures fail, but really making sense and making meaning out of that mentorship, having those entrepreneurs take those small steps forward to instill in them a sense of purpose, a double bottom line, that this isn't about money, it's about your impact. My paintbrush is being able to create a model, and at the end of the day, having some of those mentees come back to me and say, "Hey, you really made a difference." When I can look at that canvas and see Anurupa Ganguly from Prisms of Reality, who's now crushing it with her competency-based math platform through the lens of virtual reality, say, "Hey, you gave me a tip back then and I still use it." And she becomes a mentor, and she gives back, and we all pay it forward. That's when I know that paintbrush is delivering something truly magical on that canvas.
John, if somebody was looking to reach out to you for advice or to work with you at Penn, how would they go about doing so?
LinkedIn, love the connections on LinkedIn, love the connections at Catalyst at Penn GSE. Just Google it. You'll find me. And our Entrepreneur in Residence program, you can go to calendly.com/John Gamba and sign up for a session. They're free. We have a continuum of programming, meetups, boot camps, one-to-one mentoring through our Entrepreneur in Residence hours, our Catapult Virtual Accelerator. These are all things that you can Google. Sign up, tap in, become part of the network. We have supported 2,000 education entrepreneurs in the last 15 years, 1,000 in the last 5 years. We've given away $2 million of non-dilutive capital, and those companies that we've supported have gone on to raise $200 million in follow-on capital. So we're making a difference. We're intentional in what we do. We're humbled to work with some of the greatest education entrepreneurs who are rising up and transforming global education as we know it.
John, I want to end today by asking a little bit about the future here. We talked about the past. We talked a little bit about where we were with COVID and coming out of the pandemic. As you look ahead, right? We're sitting here March of 2024. AI is a year old. I always ask EdTech entrepreneurs, what happens next year at ISTE? But I want to see what your crystal ball is. Give me 5 years from now. Where do you think we're going, both in the classroom, out of the classroom, and also for those in those philanthropic areas who are looking to support the next generation of entrepreneurs?
I would say, earlier on in our conversation, I talked about opportunity. I would say that success in this space in 5 years is going to be based on evidence. Of those 3 criteria: engagement, pedagogical alignment, easy to implement or easy to adopt. The real game changers are going to be creating models of efficacy. Whatever they're delivering in the space, my crystal ball is, there's a dashboard for that, where there's analytics to be able to measure exactly how that's being deployed, implemented, and delivering an outcome for the good of the students. If you can't measure it, it's not worth it. Big fan of John Doerr and his work at Kleiner Perkins, and one of the greatest books, Measure What Matters, developing OKRs. So I'm really big into metrics-based or evidence-based design and development. And efficacy-based investing. I think that that's really going to be the forefront and where we're going 5 years from now. We're going to be able to measure exactly what we're delivering in the form of transformations in education and EdTech.
Fun over the last few years, you and I have had an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit. I want to say thank you for all the help, the mentorship, and for helping to support the work that we're doing here on TeacherCast. Thank you so much for being on the show. One last time, where does somebody go to find out more information about you?
Go to LinkedIn, just go to John Gamba, tap in, and come to Catalyst at Penn GSE. You can find us online, tap into our newsletter. You'll be able to find us. And I have to say, Jeff, thank you. Your content matters. Your content is being reviewed and received by over 1,000 EdTech entrepreneurs through our Catapult Virtual Accelerator. They love it. It's great content. Keep doing what you're doing. Your work really matters.
Thanks so much, John. And I want to say thank you guys out there for liking and subscribing this show. Don't forget to head on over to teachercast.net. We have a lot of great shows for you. Digital Learning Today is our administrative type instructional coaching show, where we're going to be talking to you about not only the issues, but how they're being used in the classroom. If you are an instructional coach, you can check out Ask the Tech Coach. And if you'd like to be featured on this show because you're an entrepreneur, you can head on over to teachercast.net/contact. We would love to have you as a guest and share your passions with everybody else. So on behalf of John Gamba and everybody here on TeacherCast, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you guys to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.
You've been listening to the TeacherCast Educational Network, hosted by Jeff Bradbury. Please reach out to the show with all of your questions on Twitter @TeacherCast or online at www.teachercast.net. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please take a moment to write a review in the App Store.